Well, fancy seeing you guys here. What what, what an effing week.
last
um,
last night I'm cooking dinner, and I'm in the middle of cooking dinner, and I get the story that the ball club's being sold. And Glenn, didn't I say at our meeting today? I said they're going to make a trade, and I said it won't happen now. I said, but come June, they'll make a trade for Corbin Burnes,
yeah, it's
and it
unreal.
happened like 4 hours later.
Well, we talked.
Unbelievable.
So Glenn Clark, Stan Charles, Luke Jackson, all together again, and we talked earlier, and it's funny because when I was talking with Buster Olney this morning, he said, I genuinely believe that David Rubenstein might have said to John Angelos and Mike Elias, "Don't wait. Like let's
Let's
get
do this.
going.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
going to be the owner of the team this season.
Yep.
Let's go ahead
Let's
and
go.
move."
Let's do this. Yep.
And while this didn't require taking on a ton of salary, it's $15 million for the season. It's something the Orioles probably could have done even without David Rubenstein. Perhaps that feeling, and it's the thing in the back of the minds, if we trade away these pieces and it doesn't work out, the biggest difference about having an owner with deeper pockets is we'll make up for it.
Right.
If it doesn't work out,
and they were able to pull this one off without giving up the real core prospects that you want to hold on to. Mayo, Basayo, Colton Cowser. I mean, it's just an amazing accomplishment to swoop in and make this deal. And I'll be honest with you, I've always admired him from the first times I read about him. And then those first 2 years in the big leagues, he wasn't that good. He was a relief pitcher mostly. Then he became a starting pitcher. And he doesn't have a blip on his radar as a starter. 109 starts. He's thrown 709 in the third innings, struck out only 870 batters, a whip of 105, and he's given up 95 home runs, 75 home runs, which is one home run every 9.5 innings. Luke?
Yeah, and Orioles fans might remember that Corbin Burnes faced the Orioles whenever the Orioles went to Milwaukee this past year, and he was his Cy Young self. Yeah. He had actually scuffled a bit for a handful of starts prior to that, but he was locked in on that day, and you saw the wipeout cutter that he features prominently. It's the kind of cut fastball you normally only see from a reliever, like an Emmanuel Clase type of, but he's a starter and he features that. And he's going to be coming into a better ballpark for pitchers. So that's exciting as well.
With a better defense, defense than the Brewers played.
Yeah, I mean, this is a true top in the rotation starter.
And
a couple of interesting things here for me on the return. The DL Hall piece of it is interesting to me because in any time these deals are made, the team dealing away the star usually wants pitching prospects in return. But that's currency in baseball. The Orioles weren't overwhelming in terms of the amount of pitching prospects they had, particularly close to the major leagues. So I'm sure Milwaukee said, well, how about DL Hall, who's in the major leagues and is a ready-made back end of the bullpen type of left-hander and with big time stuff. Now, he still has to prove that he could stay on the mound for an entire season. I don't think he's a starting pitcher, but I think he's a big-time left-hand reliever, not totally outside the mold of a guy they had prior in Josh Hader. I think he could be that kind of guy if he can stay healthy. And then Joey Ortiz falls into the bucket of Stan. Who's the name of the guy they sent over to Oakland? Darryl Hernandez falls into that bucket of a very solid infield prospect that they just didn't have any room for, and who probably needed to change addresses in order to get the opportunity.
And they get the 6 years of his service time. It's a great trade for
them. And the other interesting piece here is that in getting Burnes now, if he ends up going to free agency, they can give him a qualifying offer and recoup the pick that they gave up.
Right, the 34th
That's
pick.
the other interesting piece.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting tentacles to this. And I mean, go ahead, Glenn.
Yeah, Luke, I think what you're saying there is that I think there's so many elements to this.
Right.
I think
it's almost
there's
overwhelming, right?
right. The next question afterwards. So you give up DL Hall. Does that mean that you're committed to Tyler Wells now being
Yep.
in the bullpen, right?
Yep.
Because DL Hall, I will acknowledge, and Stan and I have talked about it, Luke. I do not have the faith in Craig Kimbrell that some people do, and so there's a small
at the
part of
very
me.
least, he's not a 3 nights and 4 nights
Right.
guy anymore. He's not that dude anymore.
So there's a small part of me that's trepidatious about giving up on DL Hall. Not in opposed. This trade, you have to make this trade. I want to make that abundantly clear. This is not me pushing back on the trade. This is a 10 out of 10 slam dunk. Only looking at giving up on DL Hall, I'm a little bit apprehensive about how much there is in the back end of the bullpen. So I wonder if this is their way of stating Tyler Wells is going to be in the back end of the bullpen, which a lot of people are of the belief that's where he's best suited, but he's good enough that he doesn't have to be at the back end of the bullpen. So that part of this is interesting to me because we do have to acknowledge that the back end of the bullpen is a little bit thin. You make that trade every time to get Corbin Burnes. I can't repeat that enough. I'm not second guessing. I'm not any of those things, but I do wonder what that means for Tyler Wells.
Luke, the number 34 pick, is that the pick we gained for Henderson winning?
No, that was 32.
That was it. This is the comp pick for
This
a small market comp pick, basically.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought it was a comp pick because you can't trade your own. You can't trade your real pick.
Those comp picks, there's like what are they called, Glenn? It's a competitive balance.
Yeah, correct.
Those are the only picks that can be moved.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that Milwaukee wanted that because A, it's a valuable pick, and B, if they were going to hold on to him, they were going to get a pick for him. So, with the
that's a good point.
So I'm not surprised that they ended up getting the pick.
That's the equivalent to us using the qualifying offer to get a pick if we let him go.
Right.
Which I don't think we will now. But
let's come back to that in a second. Stan, what do you think about what it means for Tyler Wells?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Glenn. I think Tyler Wells, I've been, other than doing your shows on Friday and talking to Kyle Gibson, talking to John Smoltz, to me, he's always been a bullpen guy. But those guys said, nah, he's a starter. And I kind of started the pencil saying, well, maybe that's why they're not going to make a big splash trade. This, for me, cements that he's the guy he's going to apprentice under one of the greatest closers in the game, Craig Kimbrell. And I think he's going to learn a little bit about how to do his business. And I think he's going to be really, really an important cog in this pitching staff.
And he can also go to spring as almost like backup if something happens to John Means, something crops up like it did a couple times last year with John. You can be in a lot worse spot than having Tyler Wells as a 6th starter. And Cole, your 7th starter. I mean, it was interesting. I was listening to MLB Network Radio. It was last weekend, and Jim Bowden was going on and on about how if he were the Orioles GM and he had the ability to make a deal, that he would go all in on trading for Corbin Burnes.
Yeah,
because he said that if you added Corbin Burnes to the top of this rotation with Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez coming on, and you have that top 3, he said that they would have as good a chance as anybody to win the World Series in the American League. Just to
put it into perspective, forget last year. In 2021, in 167 innings, he struck out 234 batters with a 0.94 whip. He followed that up in 22. In 202 innings, he struck out 243 batters and had a 0.96 whip. I mean, this is like beyond even Garrett Cole.
Yes.
I mean,
yes. I wish I don't remember who said this on Twitter tonight, but it's the best pitcher the Orioles have had since Mike Messina. I mean, like,
no question.
That's the reality of the water you're swimming in. This is different. This is that special.
Is he better than Jack Flaherty, though?
Might be slightly. We hope. We can only hope he's better than Jack.
We can
Flaherty.
always hold on to that Toronto outing, right, Stan? We can always hold on to that.
Always have Toronto.
The 2-2 curveball to Chapman, I think it was.
So let me bring this up before we get to there's bigger picture stuff still. Eric points out this also gives space for Connor Norby at 2nd, Gunnar to short, and Westberg to 3rd. Well, Eric, there's a name you're not bringing up in there that I think factors in pretty significantly into the Orioles' plans. And it goes to why as Joey Ortiz everyone that there is the common belief that of all of these infielders, Joey Ortiz is by far and away the best defensive infielder of the group.
Yep, that's what I hear. Yep.
He can hit too. And I think it's important that we say it. He's not a nothing as a hit. Joey Ortiz is a legit Major League Baseball player. And the Orioles couldn't have him toiling away at AAA again this year. They had to make a move. And I think that's why.
Yeah, he's going to be 26 in July.
Right. Like, I think it's why none of us are all that work. We understand. You understand that you had to trade one of these guys. You couldn't keep doing this. The fact that you were able to get Corbin Burnes in that deal, again, chef's kiss, right? Like, 100%.
And you could see why Milwaukee would have wanted Joey Ortiz because, like, as you mentioned, this is a guy who can hit and can defend. And Willy Adames is a free agent after next year. This gives them an internal option. That's a perfect fit for Milwaukee.
But I have to be honest. I think overall, the return for Corbin Burnes, I get that he's a free agent, but it seems a little light to me in comparison to what we understood that Chris Getz was looking to get, where he was trying to hey, I'll give you Cease, but give me all those guys.
Yeah.
Well, apparently Alex Anthopoulos thought the asking price was a bit expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah, what did he say, the sun and the moon or whatever it was? Yeah, I mean, he definitely balked at it. So it gets to, and Stan, you bring this up, and Bill brings up would have liked 2 years. Yeah, I think we all would, Bill. I think we'd all like 5 years if that's possible. I'm not going to.
We may very well get to 2 years and maybe 5.
Let's talk. Let's talk about that because the first thing I said was I'm not going to judge this move based on whether or not the Orioles signed Corbin Burnes. I'm going to judge it by what they did, and it was the right thing to do. Yep. They have a team. They have a moment. Go ahead and try to capitalize on it. If you can sign him, glory be. Hallelujah. But I'm not going to judge it based on that. No. This is another Scott Boras client that you're talking about. And while, yes, the Orioles suddenly have an influx of money to spend, typically Scott Boras is going to say to his client, you're a year away from being able to negotiate with everybody. Why would we negotiate with one team when we can wait and negotiate with everyone at the end of the year? So, Stan, I hope you're right. And I think that to your point, you make a move like this and you're David Rubenstein and you want to make a splash, you say, let's go try to do it. Let's make a statement. Let's say this is who we are. But I'm not going to judge it based on whether or not they're able to pull it off.
You're absolutely correct. It was a thing to do for this moment in time. It gets better, in my opinion, if we can sign them to some type of extension. But again, Scott Boras likes to take his clients to free agency. I think it just shows that these guys, the new ownership group, is not going to be afraid to swing big, even if they miss. But this is not a miss by any means.
Not at all. Not at all. Luke, what do you think the chances are of the Orioles doing something long term?
Well, you're hoping that Corbin really enjoys his experience in Baltimore. You sell him on the culture, and that would perhaps not give you a leg up in free agency, but get you to the table in free agency. And because at this point, with a Boras client, he's going to reach free agency, and you're going to have to compete with 29 other teams. But I don't know in terms of how likely it is that they say. I have no idea. But
Glenn,
you're hoping to sell them on the culture as part of that.
Is it too early tomorrow morning to get a Burnesometer up?
Ooh, that's the.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if we can have it tomorrow, Stan, but I'm not opposed to it. From I would say
Ken Nelson probably just heard that, is working feverishly downtown.
I'll tell you, the Lamar-meter was what Griffin Bass's neighbor, Gwen, who came up with that for once upon a time. And truth be told, she actually made another one for us that we were going to use.
That was the Rutsch meter.
We never actually did it.
We might dust that off.
It's funny you bring this up. I'm almost inclined to just say extend-a-meter. Like, at this point, anyone. Any extension that you announce at this point for one of these key core guys, the 3 players before today, and now throw Corbin Burnes in, this city will. I don't know that we can handle it. I don't know that we know what to do here.
What do you think this does seriously? I've heard from a couple people that ticket sales have been phenomenal. That they've really been off the charts. they go absolutely wild now. I mean, I think this is back. I think they can draw 2.7 to 2.9 million people.
Well, it'll be the first time, Stan. I talk about this phenomenon a lot, and we flirted with it a couple of times with Kevin Gosman. But I remember Kevin Van Valkenburg wrote a wonderful piece. I don't know if it's still up somewhere at ESPN about Felix Hernandez Day in Seattle and what it meant on the days where Felix Hernandez pitched to the city of Seattle. And Stan, you of course know from having experienced Mike Messina, from having experienced Jim Palmer.
Yep.
Luke, I don't think you've
I've even experienced Ross Grimsley.
Yeah, almost. So like really right there. What it does to a city for everybody to wake up that day and say, I have the option of going tonight to watch this guy. Yeah. And we started to get a taste of it with Grayson last year, and maybe Grayson will still prove to be that guy down the road, but this is that guy. Like, this is the guy that you cancel your plans, and on the day of a game, you say, I don't care what I was doing. I want to be there to experience the electricity of the best pitcher pitching. I want that.
I already put in my text to Steve Jeppy. His seats are in the front row behind the Oriole dugout. I said, I know you're going to take me to every game that Burnes pitches.
Right. Yeah, see what you can do there. Well, think about it. This is the first time opening day has been at home in a few years, right? Yeah. And so now
the return of Aaron Hicks, right?
That's true. You also have the Aaron Hicks revenge factor. There's a little bit of that. But Corbin Burnes is going to take the mound in Baltimore on opening day for the defending AL East champions. Like, let that sink in for a second. Let that marinate it. And Michael brought this up earlier, the awesome 48 hours. The bigger element of this is the one that I'm genuinely still trying to come up with words for. And the vibe change. Stan, I referenced something that you said to me years ago when the Orioles were going into the tanking portion of this.
Yeah.
And the frustration that I felt from you, understandably so, and you acknowledging your age and saying, I don't know how many years I have. I don't know. And it was very honest and open, and I appreciated it. And at the time, I think I was 34 or something like that, so I couldn't fully grasp what it was that you were saying, but it gave me the context that I needed. And right now, I'm 40 years old. I was born a month after the Orioles won their last World Series. I have no memory of it, obviously. I've had pleasant moments. 96, 97 meant everything to me. 2012, 2014, they were wonderful. This past season was great. I don't know that I've ever had the unbridled optimism in my life as someone who has followed this baseball team as I have right now in this moment.
I remember when the 83 season was over and we were toward the 84 season. If you had said to me, Stan, when your first year on the air with a radio show, you won the World Series, you'll never win another one, I would have thought you were out of your mind. The Orioles were coming off of a 17-year period in which they were in 1, 4, 5, 6 World Series.
Yep.
And won 3 of them. That's just a remarkable run. And it made me think we would never have a period of time like we've had since 1984 on. It's just unbelievable. And now it's the golden ring is within reach. It really is.
It's a little, I don't want to say emotional because they haven't accomplished anything yet, right? Yeah. Like you got to go out and do it, and Corbin Burnes has to stay healthy, and all these things have to work. But just from the pure standpoint of being able to believe that it's real and it's not fleet, I can't lie. The number of times.
What does this do in that locker room when they show up at spring training in 10 days or 12 days, and they look around and there's Corbin Burnes? I mean, that's got to get the players juiced up.
Well, really and I would add to that, Stan, too, that I think 3 days ago, these guys probably all were thinking to themselves, I'm here in Baltimore until I'm gone. And I like it here, but this is the reality of the circumstances. And now every single one of these guys is probably saying to themselves,
well, I hope I'm here a long time. Yeah. It's fascinating. Fascinating.
It's electric. I mean, it's electric.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm getting caught up in how truly exciting this moment is. And again, they still have to go do it, and there's a lot of more elements to it. But I think this answers the question of how is David Rubenstein going to treat being the owner of a baseball team? The guy wants to win.
Yeah.
Like,
no question about it. He's
he
thrown
wants-
down. He's thrown down the gauntlet. You know.
Yep. 100%.
I'm sure he pulled Elias aside and said, "Mike, is there anything you could do now that really will be like a game changer a bit?" And he said, "Well, you know, we were hamstrung because we didn't have the cash." And he said, "You do now."
Yep. Go do it.
So
Go do it.
It's pretty remarkable.
Any thought at all that this might not be it? Any thought at all?
I think that they could look into fortifying the bullpen some, because I think, as we mentioned, replacing Felix Bautista will be a group effort. As I mentioned, I don't think Craig Kimbrell at this point is a 3 games and 4 nights kind of guy. So I don't even know how many times you want him to go back-to-back at this point in his career and still have something left in October. You look at his Phillies season last year, 71 appearances was his most in quite a while.
In 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and I think it showed in October. And so I think if you treat Felix, replacing him, and how good would this team be with him? Oh, sorry, I don't know. Anyway,
you're right.
But I think replacing him will be a group effort. You might want to look at fortifying that part of it so you have some options on the back end. You have some good options right now, even without Hall. Tyler Wells is one. CNL Perez, particularly against like a left.
Picking somebody up to take Hall's place, you know, be it a lefty or a righty, they're still okay with left-handers. You got Irvin there for like back end swingman type of thing, and then you've got Perez and Coulombe. But getting one other guy that maybe has reverse splits that can get, you know.
Yeah, so because
would have loved to have that Robert Stevenson.
Yeah, absolutely. Like another left-hander who can at least hold his own against the big left-handed bats of the division, the Rafael Devers, Juan Soto, Anthony Rizzo, and those types. I think that could make sense. Whether that comes via trade, whether that comes via free agency, fortifying that bullpen, I think is something that they could look at. Another small thing I think is just maybe like a veteran outfielder who gives you a little protection in center field, I think would be another one. I mentioned that to Stan. Stan has wondered, is Colton Cowser that guy? I think it's possible that he could be that guy.
So I think Luke, we went into the offseason wondering if they could use one more like pure home run hitter, like one more true power threat besides Anthony Santander. I just don't know where are the at-bats coming?
Right.
For me, it's not so much that it's a power hitter. It's a dog. Like the guy that I wanted, and Luke knows this, I wanted Justin Turner.
Yeah, I know.
I thought our offense, look, we weren't good enough, but I thought our offense was a little bit like deer in the headlights against Texas. You know, they wouldn't be if you had one guy like that in that lineup. And I don't know who that guy is. I mean, that guy could be Gunnar, and it could be Jackson Holiday, and it could be Rutschman, but it sure ain't Mountcastle or Hayes being the dog.
That guy with deep postseason experience, and maybe that's a deadline ad, perhaps. And I
possibly
once you figure out which of these young hitters is going to take a step forward, because as we mentioned before, Kobe Mayo's coming along really quickly. I think that he's going to be a factor this season. Jackson Holiday's coming along really quickly. Connor Norby. So they still have some things to sort out in terms of the young position players that they have coming up. Obviously, Colton Cowser and Heston Kjerstad in the outfield, even though those guys might be a little more like I see Heston Kjerstad eventually as like a Santander replacement, same sort of skill set. It's very similar, right field DH type.
Maybe one of these years, Ryan Mountcastle will just shut me up and do what he's capable of doing, which is he's a phenomenal athlete. He just is not that guy that has
it's funny that you
at bats.
It's funny that you mentioned Mountcastle, Stan. We talk so much about the Gunnar Hendersons and the Adley Rutschmans. Still, there is nobody on this team that hits the ball harder than Ryan Mountcastle.
Yeah.
and he just has to harness it. And if he does over the course of a full season, he'll be a monster. Yeah. But he's got to swing at strikes. Yeah. So,
guys, March 28th, Corbin Burnes.
Wait, man.
I'll be down in spring training March the 5th. I'll be down there.
Man, I am. It's hard to just not be very excited in this moment about this news.
Dan, I know you'll have a comment about this. So this is according to John Morosi. The Brewers believe DL Hall has upside as a starting pitcher rather than a reliever.
I think that's what they think. I think now.
And what will they learn?
They will learn that he's a guy that got the head for being in the back end of a bullpen.
I agree.
He needs to come to the park every day ready to pitch that night rather than have those 5 days where he doesn't know what he's thinking or how to improve. He just needs to be out there and throw for an inning and 2/3. He's a potential Andrew Miller. You know, that's not an insignificant.
That's
thing.
a really good get.
Yeah.
And like I said before, every team when they're giving up a stud wants arms in return.
Yeah,
like when the Orioles, they got a really good arm, and I think that if they settle on him as a back end reliever and don't try to fight the temptation of build the endless build up with him, the endless like little nicks and bruises that come with DL Hall, just put him in the bullpen. He'll be a really, really top end reliever in the next.
And I do wonder, and it was brought up to me by a couple people tonight, is it possible that DL Hall still hadn't accepted this, and that part of the reason why the Orioles were willing to part ways with DL Hall is because they were still getting pushback from DL Hall desperately saying, I'm not a reliever.
I think DL Hall was really happy to have made it in the major leagues last year and he knows he belongs now. I don't think they were getting that much pushback. I think this is a case of the Brewers really liking DL Hall, and the Orioles, I'll bet, were a little surprised that they were going for him instead of Hauser or Kjerstad. And when the reality set in, they said, "Yeah, we can do that." Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe in 12 hours we'll have something else to discuss. Maybe there will be a lot more of these. Stan will be in with me.
Maybe they'll trade for Devin Williams.
Sure.
Throw him into the deal. Just come along to Sarasota with your buddy.
If the money's there, go get Jordan Montgomery too. What are we doing? Let's just keep going. Stan will be in with me tomorrow morning on Glenn Clark Radio.
You guys have nothing to talk about.
Yeah, nothing at all.
One of those. I don't know how long you guys are going to go. You might go.
Yeah, might be a 5-hour show tomorrow. Yeah. Might be a 5-hour show.
Dan will need an intermission though. If you're going 5 hours,
yeah, right. We'll pause for a little bit and let him keep going. So we'll look forward to that. And of course, don't forget, thanks to AJ Michaels. Thanks to all of our great partners.
Superbook.
Pick up a Goose Flights.
Goose Flights.
Great celebratory beer.
You can get the Goose Flights at Guilford Hall Brewing Company, all 7 Glory Days locations. You can buy 6-packs or single cans at the Costas Inn. And you can buy cases at the Wine Loft, right?
Wine Source, yes.
I'm sorry, Wine Source.
Great-looking beer.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a good-looking can.
I'm giving full credit to Glenn Clark.
I will add in cans also available at Alonzo's on Cold Spring Lane and the Green Turtle Sportsbook in Canton. So,
Glenn, will you talk to John tomorrow? Let's talk about a Corbin Burnes locker.
I'm down. Let's make it happen. If that keeps him around longer, let's do it. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out tonight.
All right.